Delos is the vacation hotspot of the future, and boy do they have a vacation for you, where you have the choice of 3 worlds to visit. Roman world, medieval world, and WestWorld. Each world authentic to its time period, and populated with robots who are there to serve the human tourists, whether that's shooting them or screwing them. All while the underground scientists repair the robots and get them ready for more tourist enjoyment. John Blaine, played by James Brolin, and Peter Martin, played by Richard Benjamin, are 2 dudes who are off on a bromance trip to WestWorld, where they live life like it's the Old West, where they can rob banks and have shootouts. However, the computer system that operates the robots starts glitching, which causes the robots to turn violent and start attacking the tourists, in which John and Peter have to survive the wrath of the deadly cowboy robot Gunslinger, played by Brenner, who will stop at nothing to destroy these 2 guests, which leads to a deadly game of cat and mouse. So today we are going to look into 10 things that you didn't know about the WestWorld movie, which came out all the way back in 1973, but is still just as exciting now as it was all the way back then. So let's check it out. Number 10, inspired by a trip to Disneyland. WestWorld was written and directed by author Michael Crichton, who at that stage had already written several books, including The Andromeda Strain and The Terminal Man. He first got the idea of writing WestWorld while visiting Disneyland and being really impressed with the animatronics of the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, and no doubt probably thought what would happen if the animatronic pirates were to suddenly turn on the guests. Crichton thought the story of WestWorld would be better off as a movie, rather than writing another book, as he thought the story would work better as a visual experience. And as Crichton fans would know, WestWorld is something of an early template/precursor to Jurassic Park, as that also has a similar story of a high-tech theme park for tourists, in which the main attractions start killing the tourists. In Jurassic Park's case, it's dinosaurs, and in WestWorld, it's robot cowboys. Number 9. Michael Crichton had hesitations in WestWorld. Crichton would team up with producer Paul Lazarus III, where they got along really well and decided to make WestWorld together, with Lazarus acting as the movie's producer. Crichton had previously directed a made-for-TV movie called Pursuit, but WestWorld was to be his first theatrical feature. Crichton later admitted that he didn't actually want his first theatrical movie to be a science fiction movie, but he went along with it anyway. And to make matters worse, every studio turned the WestWorld script down, except for MGM. But Crichton was hesitant to go with MGM after hearing many stories of how difficult the studio could be with movie productions, along with meddling in the productions. But Crichton was reassured by MGM's head of productions that he wouldn't have to deal with any of the horror stories that he had heard about how difficult the studio could be. Crichton would also add that that promise was mostly kept, emphasis on mostly. So, what was Crichton's issue with the sci-fi genre? Well, my guess is because in the early to mid-70s, the genre had kind of fizzled out and was no longer part of the popular domain. But, as we all know, it would be brought back with a bang with Star Wars in 1977. Number 8. Brenner needed the work. Legendary screen actor Brenner was incidentally down on his luck at the time WestWorld went into production. It's a movie role that he wouldn't have otherwise accepted. That and the fee was lower than his usual wage. But he had great financial difficulties and wasn't getting offers to star in any other movies. I guess it wasn't an easy time for him, so he took the part of the villainous and terrifying Gunslinger, a park attraction robot who, like the other robots, grows a conscience and is out to destroy park goers John and Peter. With the movie's third act acting entirely as a cat and mouse chase between the Gunslinger and Peter characters. The attire we see Brenner wear is identical to what he wore in The Magnificent Seven when he played Chris. I'm guessing this was a wink wink nudge nudge to the audience, but I like to think that the Magnificent Seven itself exists within the WestWorld universe, and that the robot was designed after Chris from Magnificent Seven. Despite his reluctance to take on the part, Brenner gives a chilling and memorable performance. In fact, John Carpenter took inspiration of the gunslinger for Michael Myers in Halloween, and Arnold Schwarzenegger also based his performance on the Terminator on the gunslinger too. And yeah, when you watch it, you can see the gunslinger is a Michael Myers and Terminator combo sandwich. Number 7. The struggles to find the two main leads. So WestWorld is told through the perspective of tourists John Blaine and Peter Martin, who experience many of the joys and delights of WestWorld. They even get up to some sexy time with robots, which is kinda weird when you think about it, as well as suffering the terrors of the park when things go wrong. So they were very pivotal parts of the movie, and casting them was no easy feat. Many actors were considered for the roles, including James Caan, Jon Voight, and Elliot Gould. Many of the actors sought after were either too expensive to use or were unavailable. Finally, progress was made when William Shatner was cast as Peter Martin. Yep, Captain Kirk himself. But they still had to find someone to play John, to which Leslie Nielsen and Peter Graves were considered, till finally it was decided to cast younger actors in order to keep Yul Brynner as the main star of the movie. So Shatner was let go, and it was back to square one with casting the roles. And I would imagine that it probably would have been less expensive to hire younger, lesser known talents. Number 6. Mayhem in the early production. Now, remember when I said that Michael Crichton said that for the most part he didn't have much interference from MGM when it came to the production of WestWorld? Well, that wasn't so much the case in the film's pre-production, as MGM wanted script rewrites made at the last minute, supposedly as late as the first day of shooting, as well as leaving Crichton with no control over the casting. The two main leads of John and Peter were literally cast 48 hours before the shoot was to begin. But despite their last-minute casting, both James Brolin and Richard Benjamin do a great job and have amazing chemistry. I like how their characters contrast too. I always felt that Brolin's John was the alpha male, the one who was pushy and sort of went into situations without thinking of the consequences, whereas Benjamin's Peter character was the more apprehensive one who often gets pushed around and forced into John's lead, but still tries to go into things with caution. It's a great character dynamic. MGM originally didn't want to invest any more than $1 million into WestWorld's production, but thankfully they put in a much needed extra $250,000, which went towards the cast and crew. Number 5. Filming. WestWorld was filmed on the MGM backlot before it was sold off and demolished. The Western setting looks perfect and just like anything that you'll see in a Western movie. Supposedly, some of the costumes and props were leftovers from other Western movie productions. Filming also took place around the Mojave Desert, and the shoot only lasted 30 days. Crichton wanted to get the job done nice and quickly, and to not have to bother with reshoots. Just get what he needed and be done with it. WestWorld is something of a movie first, as it was the first movie to use digitalized imagery in a feature film, when we see the gunslinger's point of view. Yes folks, this is early CGI in movies, and it was pretty groundbreaking for its time. The movie starts with a deliberately cheesy advert for Delos, which informs us the viewers of the WestWorld, Roman World, and Medieval World theme parks. This intro was actually a last-minute addition, shot in post-production. And for those who are curious when in the future WestWorld takes place, well, it apparently takes place in the future world of 1983. Yeah, remember 1983? The year when Return of the Jedi came out, Michael Jackson did the moonwalk, and all those pesky robots were killing everyone. I'm telling ya, that was a crazy year. Number 4. Injuries. While filming WestWorld, there were a few scrapes that took place. For starters, Yul Brynner got hit in the eye by a blank cartridge, which struck his cornea. And as a result of this, Brenner couldn't wear his robotic eye contact lenses, as they would give him red eye and would also cause his eye to weep. So the filming schedule had to be rearranged in order to give Brenner's eye time to heal. The next person to suffer an injury was James Brolin, in the scene where his character gets bitten by a robotic snake, the snake that was hanging off his arm actually did bite him. Now I'm surprised, as I always assumed that this was a fake snake, as you don't see a close-up of his arm. They could have easily gotten away with using a prop snake, but no, apparently the snake was real. In fact, the snake's teeth managed to pierce through a heap of protective padding that Brolin was wearing on his arm. Coming to think of it, if you look at Brolin's face, you can kind of see that he's not acting and was generally freaked out about getting bitten by this snake. Yep, that is the face of someone who is not having a very good day. Number 3, sequel. So considering WestWorld's popularity, it seemed that there would be many possibilities for sequels, where in 1976 we got Future World. When I first heard about Future World, I was excited. I thought it would be like WestWorld, only it had a futuristic setting, where once again the robots run amok. But nope, it was nothing like WestWorld. It was this weird psychedelic movie involving conspiracies, in which the robots at Delos are now cloning world leaders or something like that. Look, I tried to watch it but couldn't get into it. I found it kind of boring and too unfamiliar to its predecessor. MGM started developing Future World, but Michael Crichton refused to return, so MGM then scrapped the project to make Logan's Run instead. Brenner did however return for a cameo, where once again he plays Gunslinger in a brief dream sequence. And it's just weird. Where we see him, what looks like ninjas. Yeah, once again it's weird. And sadly it was the last film that he starred in. Future World was picked up by American International Pictures, and it failed miserably upon its release. Then there was a TV series in 1980 called Beyond Westworld, which, like Future World, involved a plot of robots being used to infiltrate in order to try and take over the world. Look, it shouldn't be this complex. Westworld had a pretty basic story, which was about robots who are servants for entertainment, going crazy at theme parks and killing the guests. Just keep it at that. It doesn't have to be complex and go into these conspiracy theories about robot clones and world domination. Just stick to what works. Then Westworld was remade into a new TV series on HBO in 2016, but I haven't seen any episodes, so I can't really pass comment. Number 2, Michael Crichton cut out a heap of the movie. There was originally a completely different introduction and ending that was planned for Westworld. The alternative beginning was going to start off with scenes of the hovercraft that we see the interior of at the start to be flying over the desert sand. But due to time and budget reasons, Crichton just couldn't get the effect to look right, so it was scrapped. This always bugged me as a kid. Like, we see our main characters in this large futuristic craft, but never actually see it moving in motion from the outside. I don't know, that always disappointed me. The original ending was going to see Gunslinger and Peter getting into fisticuffs, when Gunslinger gets torn apart by falling into a rack. The desire of the scene was to show a super advanced machine getting destroyed by a simpler one, but Crichton decided to change the ending as he found it to be foolish. After seeing an early cut of the movie, Crichton himself took to the editing room and cut a heap of scenes out, as he found the movie to be too long and boring. I'm guessing he felt that the movie dragged and just needed a punchier pace. These included scenes of extra dialogue, a bank robbery scene, a sales room sequence, and the chase scene at the end between Gunslinger and Peter went on for much longer. There was even more scenes of robots killing people, including a tourist getting killed by having their arms ripped off. Holy crap balls, put that scene back in! I really want to see that. Although I couldn't actually find any of these deleted scenes, some of them were actually added to televised broadcasts of Westworld in the late 70s. In a behind-the-scenes documentary for Westworld, we see footage of a Roman soldier throwing a tourist into a swimming pool, which actually wasn't in the final film, so maybe that's one of the deleted scenes. Number 1. Release. Westworld was released in August 1973, and it was a huge hit and became MGM's most successful movie of that year, as it would go on to make $10 million on a $1.2 million budget. It was released alongside a novelization tie-in, which was written by Crichton, and was more faithful to his original script. So if you want to know what his original vision was like, check out the book. The movie also got positive reviews from critics, who liked this new science fiction take on the Western genre, bringing a welcomed clash of old and new. WestWorld has gone on to be regarded as a science fiction classic, a popular entry in the genre. Although some of the tech and ideas might seem a bit dated and kitsch now, it is still an easy to digest and very enjoyable movie. It's generally an interesting idea about having a high-tech theme park breaking down with the tourists being attacked. It could also be interpreted that there's themes of slavery in WestWorld, in that we have these robots who are forced into servitude to see to the needs and entertainment of the rich, those needs even being both violent and intimate. And we're never given an answer as to why they malfunction. Maybe they're rebelling or rejecting this servitude. Or maybe the computer system that runs WestWorld has gone rogue and wants to take over the world. Or maybe I'm just looking too deeply into it. Either way, WestWorld is a science fiction classic from a pre-Star Wars 1970s, a time before spaceships took over. It's a unique experience that takes the old Western genre and breathed new life into it. Go check out WestWorld. The best way to describe it is that it is lots of fun, and it never drags or seems boring. It's an exciting and often thrilling little adventure with a good pace that doesn't overcomplicate things while leaving the viewer open to interpretation. Anyway, I'm Minty, and does anyone else find it funny that the tech in WestWorld couldn't perfect the robot's hands, but they could perfect the reproductive organs, which are by far way more complex, so the guests can sleep with them? Man, those scientists definitely had their priorities. See ya!